before the end of the year. We've been pushing this very aggressively. Last time we used the format to give you sort of a visual illustration where things stood. I think that was very helpful. So I'm trying to keep that format. Things get kind of cluttered, so I have to walk through some of these things, but hopefully this will help. Normally we look at these numbers, and right now, as if you look at each region, we're anywhere from the lower to the upper 70s, or mid to upper 70%, overall 72%. So it seems like it's crawling in the overall, but that's because there's a lot of other things that have to happen after the build out itself. So even though there's a lot of activity right now out in the field, this 72 will crawl until basically the last 25% of the project will be basically the first half of next year. All right. So we showed you this map last time around, and this time I actually put little squares in the counties that have the sites that I'm not necessarily tracking but very aware of, because these are the counties that so far have chosen to have local enhancements to the overall system for their own purposes. But overall, we had labeled all of these so you can see what was completed. One of the things that I changed in here is a label active to active build. That brought some confusion to some folks, so I changed that. That means that we're actively building a site. That means drilling for foundations, pouring concrete, all the stuff that goes on with building up a site. So we have change, and as we go to the next one, I'm highlighting here 7 sites that have changed status. Overall, as things move on, I wanted to show you what that status had changed from. So, for example, if we look at Region 1, which is in the middle, the first one has changed status from what would have been a lease site to a build site, which is in regulatory status. Now, this label here is sort of a hybrid of two, because this is a DNR site, but it's in regulatory. So instead of just a brown with a D, it's a brown but with an R for regulatory. All right. The next few sites here have changed from what used to be, we ordered the towers for it, so now we're actually building foundations for the towers. So towers have been ordered. They're going to be coming in late November. So we're in the process of building up foundations for all of these. This particular site here has changed from what was active build to a site completed for civil. Up here, we have a site that changed from, again, we had finished the regulatory, so we ordered the tower, to now we're actually drilling the foundations and getting ready to pour the concrete for the foundations. Down south, we changed from regulatory status to active build. And on the east side of the state, we changed from, again, regulatory status to ordering the tower. So in this example, we wanted to make sure that we completed the regulatory, that we got the NEPAs and the SHPOs approved before we actually go ahead and build the steel. So now that we got it approved, we immediately go ahead and put in the order for the tower so we can get it in before the end of the year. So I have this little symbol here because I wanted to explain why is it that we do that? Why is it that we wait for the regulatories to complete before we actually order steel? So here in this example, in these 2 sites up here, which are in Region 1, turns out that during the regulatory process, the FAA told us that this particular tower was too high. So we had to redo the design and lower the tower, but that resulted and this other tower over here having to go higher. That's the whole domino effect. When you change one tower, it has an effect on the adjacent towers. So that's one of the reasons why we don't order the steel, because if we do, then we end up with steel that we can't use. Very expensive steel. Any questions about this map before I move forward? All right, so overall activities, we continue to work with Des Moines site reconfiguration. This is for integration of a site that we have in Des Moines and some of the data applications as well. We're working with Westcom, doing a lot of that work with Westcom and Rob Dennert. We continue to push for more civil completions, so we're looking at about another 30 sites before the end of the year. Microwave dish installations continue, and that's just going to be an ongoing process between here and first quarter. And we have, of the sites that we've actually built, we have about 46% of those sites have power already. The remaining sites are just on the queue. This is the whole application for power, getting on their queue so that they can come out and do the power installs and confirmation and all that. So it's all in the queue right now, but right now we have roughly half of the sites built have powered on them. So what that means for us is, as the power comes on, we have a secondary crew that goes out to all the towers and starts installing the batteries. Remember, we had ordered all this equipment, we had it in the warehouse. We didn't want to put them in the shelters if it's going to be freezing out there. So once the power is applied, we power up the shelters, the heaters kick in, and now we have a secondary crew that's driving throughout the entire state installing these batteries. And that's a particular, very specific team because, the batteries are about 120 pounds each, and it is 8 hours worth of batteries. So we're talking between 4 and 6 shelves, each shelf having 4 batteries on it. So it requires a specific physique and equipment to be able to do that. As we move forward, we had mentioned last time that there were some internal state processes that needed to be resolved before we could build on the 2 categories of sites, which were IPTV and DNR. The DNR sites have been resolved, so we're moving forward with the DNR sites. And the only ones that remain right now are the 3 IPTV tower sites. So we're working on that. We're doing some further loading analysis, working with the IPTV team, and I'm expecting that to be resolved relatively soon. All the lease sites, as I mentioned before, they are identified. We have all the drawings set up, but we don't want to hit go until we lock every single site. Because as you saw, if one of these sites drop, like an IPTV site, it can have an impact on the overall design. So we don't want to lock in the leases until everything else is locked in. Other aspects here that I don't have covered here is, in some cases, we're doing some sites. We're working with, for example, with DOT, Jeff Sunholm and his team, where we have to make sure that we don't interrupt his operations. So we're putting up some temporary sites so that they can continue to operate with their VHF channels while we're building a site where their site used to be. That's all I had. Any questions?
Yeah, Melvin, I have one. Well, it's kind of 2. As far as some of the sites near cores, when do you expect those to perhaps be active and all networked together and more or less fully functional?
So we have 1 core that's fully active. We have the other 2. We've installed some equipment at the sites, and others we've held back because in order to bring them up, we have to synchronize all the 3 cores together. And since the backhaul isn't up yet, we want to keep them localized over here where we can do things manually at the warehouse in a temporary setup, and then we go ahead and take them out to the field. We're expecting about 90% of the sites to be built by the end of this year. Some of these, if you look at the map, some of these are in regulatory process. We have about 10 right now that are in the regulatory process. We're expecting about half of those to be resolved this year, and we're just waiting for that to be resolved so we can start that process. So the remaining to fall out, it'll probably be January, February by the time we get those towers done. Once we do that, in the same process, that's why I always keep on saying the microwave, because the microwave gets billed as the towers become available both ends, so we can have crews that point the dishes in both directions. So we want to start doing the coverage testing when foliage comes. So April, May timeframe is when we'd be targeting for that. So that means all the other stuff is going to be done by then.